So today on the podcast, we have Freddie Hunt. Freddie is the son of the late James Hunt, 1976 Formula One world champion. He's currently a racing car driver with his goal of making it to Le Mans. We have a great chat about his memories of his father and some of the history there, him running at Goodwood, and his resurgence as a race car driver, and even chat a little bit about his farm that he runs in Scotland. So if you guys enjoy this podcast, share it with some friends, subscribe, like, enjoy the show. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. You're well on your way to becoming a professional race car driver. That's right?
Seems to be, yeah. It's this year's been going pretty well. I signed with Writer Engineering at the beginning of the season, and they're completely new to prototype racing. They've got plenty of experience with GTs and been very successful. So we're all learning. I mean, I've done a little bit of LMP3 before. My teammate has not. The engineer has never worked on these cars before. So we're really starting from scratch at the beginning, and we're making good progress, I think.
Right. And then so I've only driven an LMP3 car once. Then they're spectacular cars. Like they're quick, downforce, just insane on the forearms. But what series is it that you're racing in? Is it are you picking and choosing, or are you hunting a championship?
The main series is Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Okay.
But the one we did this weekend was the German Prototype Cup.
Okay.
I think it's Prototype Cup, yeah. And that was just filling in for a couple of other drivers. They pulled out at the last minute, and I assume that the team had already paid the entrance for the race, so that's why we went ahead and did it.
Okay, right on. Well, no, good thing you guys ended up winning.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, really good. It's great to be back at the Nürburgring. 2009 was the last time I drove there, so it was nice to be back there. Unfortunately, we didn't do the full GP circuit, but it was still cool.
Right on. So you are the manager or kind of responsible for the Hunt brand right now. Is that correct? When did that happen?
So we effectively launched really in 2016. So that was the 40th anniversary of Dad's World Championship. I mean, we'd registered the brand before that, but that was our sort of first major year.
Okay.
And so we run it together with the help of your consultants, and we did have a manager working for us, but that's now ended, and we've just gone through a sort of phase, re-looking at it and seeing what can we do. We decided we want to sort of work, do it ourselves in-house, but we will be delegating individual aspects to certain people and companies.
Right. So what was the impetus for that? Was it kind of the resurgence in Formula One? Was it the Rush movie? Were you guys able to have that in place before that movie came out? I'm just forgetting what date that came out.
That was 2013. Actually, now
Okay.
you mention it. My brother did some work with my uncle on a clothing line, and I think that was sort of prompted by my uncle saying, "Look, the movie's coming out. Now is a good time to capitalize if you want to." Now, I had previously worked with my uncle in the past, and so I didn't want to work with him again. We had a very loving relationship. We weren't great working together. So I said, "Look, Tom, you go and do that with Uncle Dave if you like. I'll step out of this one." So that was, I think, just prior to the movie launch. And needless to say, that they did have an argument, and but then we sort of and that went quiet. And then Uncle Dave died. I can't remember what year. But that, I think he must have died in 2014 or 15, I think.
Okay.
And then 2016 was when we really got going.
Right. So I want to jump back to kind of your early childhood before we get into your racing career there. Paint me a picture of what your kind of, what you were born into. You were quite young when your father passed away, but what was life like? And I assume that was in Wimbledon.
Yeah, so we lived in Wimbledon near the common, near the tennis courts, and I'm trying to remember. I mean, my parents divorced when I was 2 or 3. My mum moved got a house in Wimbledon as well. But we didn't stay there very long before we moved down to the countryside in West Sussex. But it's a long time ago, and those memories are pretty faded. But as soon as I got into the countryside, that's when I sort of came into my own. I was a pretty feral, wild child. Most of my time was just spent, all of my spare time was spent out in the woods, in the fields and the woods, trying to catch everything I could see. I was fascinated with wildlife, and then I started riding around that age as well, but not too often. My mother was from a horse background. Her mother was a racehorse trainer. Her father was a huntsman, master of foxhounds, and so I started riding, and then that got more and more frequent as I grew up. And then I got to the age of 13, and I kind of said to Mum that I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit bored of this pony club, this riding, just eventing and show jumping and stuff. And she said, "Oh, do you want to try polo?" So I did, and I loved it. That really is definitely one of the greatest sports on this planet. It really is.
Right.
So I started playing polo, and when I was 15, 16, I left school when I was 15, I think 16, to play professional polo. But unfortunately, it only lasted 2 years. Well, not unfortunately, but it would have been unfortunate if I didn't meet racing.
Right. So let me back you up there. So you correct me if I misheard you. You left high school to go pursue a professional polo career?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So you dropped out of school at 15 or 16 saying, "Hey, I'm going to go make a living playing polo."
Yeah.
Wow.
Not very wise when you haven't got any money behind you.
Right. And that was my next question. And maybe I thought I was just being ignorant, being from North America, being from Canada. Polo seems like, the most elite upper class sport, even compared to racing. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, the money involved. You're not talking Formula One money, but for the high golf, for the top level of polo, let's say if you're a pro, you need 2 strings of horses. One in the UK, and you're in Europe where you're playing, and then one in America or in Argentina or wherever. Let's say, each string 8 to 10 horses, averaging probably maybe 80 grand a horse. And the running costs of it all is, it's a lot. So it's pretty big money. Some of the best horses are selling for 150, 200 or so. My horse, the level I got to when I was 18, my horses were old and knackered, and I needed to buy 6 new horses, and I probably would have had to spend 20 on each.
Right. So, like, I assume there are guys making a living once they get there, but I assume, like racing, it takes a whole ton of money to get to that level.
It was actually interesting. The weekend. So how it happened, my transition from polo to motorsport was on a Friday, and my horses were all knackered. I was recovering from a throat infection at the time. My life was, I was a bit down at the time, and sat down with Mum and said, what are we going to do? Because the horses are knackered, they can't do another season. So we thought, right, we'll sell the horses, and what's left of them. I probably would have got 10 grand for the whole lot. 6 horses, they were really old and buggered. And I'll try and get a job playing for another team. And then that same evening, I popped into town to rent a movie, and went past the pub and went, oh, I can get a quick beer in. And I bumped into a friend who invited me to the Goodwood Festival of Speed. So I went there the next day, and his girlfriend was driving a Maserati GT4, and she said, do you want to drive it? I thought, yeah, I'd love to. I'd only had my driving license for a few weeks. I'd never even seen a race car since my father died, since I went to going to Grand Prix when I was 5. But I drove this thing, and it was fantastic. And then I had to sort of make the decision. The friend that took me, he was a polo player, the ex-racing driver, and he said, Freddie, look, you're not a bad polo player, but you've got no money behind you, and you did start a bit late. So I suggest you go racing. You've got the name. You have to work hard with it, and if you like it, and if you're good at it, you can make a career. So I did that, and then when I was sort of umming and ahhing, I think it was the next day, I bumped into Malcolm Borrock, who was at the time the England polo captain. Now, and he said to me, his handicap was 6, ranging from 0 to 10, 10 being the best. there's not very many of them. There's less 10 goalers than there are Formula One drivers. They are elite. So 6 goals is pretty damn good. And he said, look, I'm the England probably 2 or 3 best, second or third best player in the UK. I'm the captain of the England team. I'm lucky if I take home 20 grand profit at the end of the year. So
Yeah, there you go.
Go racing.
So, and backing up to when you were young, who filled you in on your father's career? Was that, kind of stories as you grew up always, or was that later in life that you kind of became curious?
I think it was more since I started racing, really.
Wow.
Much about him. I mean, I obviously knew a bit about him. But I've learned so much more since starting racing. The amount of people that, the old journalists that knew him, and the old people that that knew him. That I've got talking to those people and reading a lot more about his career. And I mean, the James Hunt, the biography, the Gerald Donaldson book, I think that's the only one that's actually approved by the family, apart from Against All Odds, which was written when he was at Blid alive. That's actually a very sort of all-encompassing book of his career, very accurate. So I learned a lot from that. But then the rest is just watching interviews. I mean, I saw an interview on YouTube last night that I hadn't seen before, which is cool, him 77. So the whole time I'm still seeing new bits of information, new photographs. People send photographs that they took in the 70s and haven't looked at since then. So it's nice, and I hear new stories the whole time. It's great. Someone messaged me on Instagram the other day saying, I used to have a bar in Spain, and your dad and Sean Connery were locals, not my favorite locals. So if you want to hear some cool stories, give me a call.
That's great. That's great. So your father's fame, it didn't really have much of an effect on you in your younger days?
No, I don't suppose it did. In my younger days, I mean, I didn't really know that. I knew my father was a Formula One world champion, but I didn't really know what that meant, really. And I certainly didn't know, certainly among the British public, how loved he was. I had no idea. It was when I started racing, I started to realize the gravity of who he was.
Right. So when did you quit Polo, you got that drive, a leisurely drive at Goodwood, and then so what was your kind of next step, saying, hey, I want to go racing? What did you do?
I rang my uncle Dave. So he was Dad's youngest brother. He got up to Formula 3000. I think he did some testing for Benetton. So he had a reasonable career, pretty decent one. And I said, Dave, if I want to be a racing driver, what do I do? He said, first of all, think about it for a week and then call me back if you're still serious. So I did that. And then we looked at, right, well, am I still young enough to potentially go to Formula One? The answer was yes, but so let's try it. So
how old were you?
I was 18 then at that time. So this is latter half of 2006. And then we looked at Formula Renault, Formula BMW, Formula Palmer Audi, and Formula Ford. My dad started Formula Ford. Formula Ford was the cheapest. Ford were offering the most help. Actually, Formula Palmer Audi were, Jonathan Palmer was offering good help. But those cars were really powerful. I think it would have been too much for me my first season. So we went into the British Formula Ford Championship, which turned out to be, I think, it was one of its most competitive years that year. Most of the time, the top 10 were qualifying within 2 or 3 tenths. It was really tight. But I had a great teammate, Nick Tandy. He's now a LeMans 24-hour champion and full-time factory driver. He was my first teammate, and I couldn't have picked a better team. So yeah, but it was tough. And my problem was, I mean, I only raced until mid-2009, then I stopped because I had a mental issue. I couldn't deliver under pressure. And that pressure was even at an official race meeting. So behind closed doors, when it was just Nick and I testing and no one watching, I was quick. And people knew that, the word spread fast. But then it'd get to the Friday official practice, and with everyone watching, all these cameras on me, I put so much pressure on myself to deliver, I couldn't do it. And I still get that now, well, to a degree. I've overcome that a lot. but it's taken a long time. And, I'd be 2 seconds off my own pace, spinning and crashing. I destroyed that car several times that year. And then in 2008, didn't have any sponsors. I did a few races. I think I did 4 races in 2008. And then 2009, I started the ADAC Formula Masters in Germany. I met a manager over there, and he had sponsors for me. So that was fully funded. We did some decent testing. But I think even then, my behind closed doors testing started to suffer there, because I was getting so worked up that I wasn't delivering what I knew I could deliver. And it got.
Do you think that was? I mean, starting. How old were you when you started in the Formula Ford there?
I would have been 18, 19. Yeah.
Right. And so by today's standards, that's incredibly old to start. All the guys who are in Formula One, NASCAR, whatever it be, started racing when they were 7 or 8 years old. Do you think it's just lack of, pressure and experience, like, missing that 8 years old to 19 years old, high pressure situations?
We do it, yeah. I mean, to learn to compete under pressure, I never had that. But actually, looking back in Polo, I'd never play as well as in a game, in a match, as I would in practice. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
It wasn't nearly as great as it was when I got into the racing car.
Right.
I mean, there was chalk and cheese. I was flying. Nick Tandy will confirm that. I was way quicker than I should have been for my level of experience when I was relaxed. But I could only do that when I was, when there was literally no one watching, when it was just Nick and I on the track. We'd go to Bedford Autodrome or go somewhere, and I think the problem was that I knew so many people were watching and wanted me to do well. And the standards and the expectations I had on myself as well, my own standards. And when I wasn't delivering, when I wasn't getting in that relaxed state, I didn't know how to get into that relaxed state. And what I did was just make it even worse. And it was just a nasty snowball effect. So it just got worse and worse. And it got to the point in mid 2009, I just couldn't take any more of it. It was just demoralizing. I was really unhappy. So I stopped.
Right. So what did you do? What did you do then? 2009. You stopped racing. You had this, burning desire. 3 years, one goal to get to Formula One, and then it just became too much. What did you do after that?
I tried to move to Argentina. So I spent a lot of time there in the Polo years. So I went there for a few months, ran out of money, came crawling back to mum, tail between my legs. And then I bumped into someone who had just bought a pest control franchise, and he said, "Why don't you give this a try?" So I worked for him for a week to see what it was like. I thought I could do this job standing on my head. And 2 weeks later, I was a qualified pest controller. I ran a pest control business for 2.5 years. And then I sold the business. So this was back end of 2012. Sold the business, tried again to move to Argentina. Well, I successfully moved this time. I had an Argentine girlfriend at this stage. So I lived there throughout 2013. Then we broke up, and it was when I went to a race. I was invited to a race in Argentina, and that's when I realized I wanted to race again. So I looked for sponsors out there. I wanted to race out there, and I found one, but it was only like 20% of the budget that I needed. And then actually my mum was, so my mum was diagnosed with cancer in 2011, I think, but I didn't think it was fatal. I didn't think it was terminal. But then end of 2013, I didn't realize it was terminal until only a month before she died. That was not ideal. I realized I had to come back to the UK, to Europe to race. So I did, and that was January 2014. I moved back, or February 2014. I moved back.
And you put together a deal in England to go race?
No, only one. I did a Formula Ford race. I can't remember who sponsored that. And then end of 2014, was the winter 2014-2015 was the MRF Championship. So the Sons of Speed documentary, which is due to be released this year, that was the start of that. So I did the MRF Championship, which again, unfortunately, was a mess. So Mum died in September, and this season started in November, or was it October, I think. So I missed the testing, the pre-season, because I insisted that I've driven for so long. If you want me to compete against Matthias Lauda, I need a good, at least 4 or 5 days testing. I missed all that, and then went straight in, and I was drinking too much, and my head was a mess, and I drove like a twat.
So explain to the listeners who don't know that documentary what that documentary is.
Okay, so that is it's basically about Matthias Lauda and I racing against one another. There's an Indian chap called Jose, who's now become a really good friend. He wanted to put us in 2 cars together. He's running some racing teams over in India, and then someone said to him, "Why don't you film it, document it?" And he said, "Yeah, cool." So that's how it started. So we did that championship, and that was supposed to be, the whole movie, but they didn't get enough footage. And then Joe's had a Barney with the production company, so it all went legal and pear shaped for a few years. And I thought it was, that was it. It's not going to happen. And then last year he managed to get all that sorted out. I think another friend came on to invest the final bit to get the extra footage we needed. So Matthias and I did a race last year, 2 races last year in the Revolution at Donington, to finish off the movie. So that the movie is now finished, and so we got some clips of Matthias and I racing in the MRF, which is like a Formula Renault, basically.
Yep.
And then we did just one round, 2 races at Donington in these Revolution cars last year.
Right. So you mentioned there you were drinking too much, and I mean that's certainly what most people think of. Outside of your father's Formula One championship, they think of him, partying. There's all these great pictures of him with a empty pitcher of beer and a cigarette in his hand. Do you think that reputation had an effect on you in your adolescent years or your early 20s?
I don't know. I partied pretty hard growing up. I think I would have done it regardless. I don't think I did it because he did it, because I thought, it was cool. I don't think I did that. Polo is a really partying scenario. It really is. I mean, we hit it pretty fucking hard. It was a lot of fun. And that's just sort of carried on. And then when I started racing, I realized I can't do that, So, I worked hard on my fitness and everything, but I still I wasn't nearly as focused then as I am now. Now I realize, how delicate the mind is, and how well, certainly for me, how much effort I have to make to keep my mind, in a focused position. So when I get in the car, I'm ready. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, no, I think people who don't race, and I think even for myself, it's all I can really reflect on is when I was young, you didn't really appreciate that. But then as you get older and you start moving up the ranks and racing gets longer, you realize how difficult it is to stay focused. And as soon as you start to go adrift, like, you see the tenths fall off, and then you have to bring your mind back to it for sure. I always explain it to friends who are golfers. Imagine hitting a perfect golf shot as, compared to a racing corner, but with no time in between. Do it again, do it again, do it again.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And as you know, as soon as your mind starts to wander, or if you're not 100% committed, confident, you're losing a few tenths, or a bit of oversteer here, or you can't quite set the car up right, and you next thing you know, you're P12.
Yeah, or worse. Yeah. So since you've become I guess kind of the steward of your dad's brand now, and you've been learning more and more about his history, going back to the partying, do you think that was overblown, or do you think that was appropriate, the reputation he had?
No, I think it's appropriate. He partied hard, he drank a lot. He was an alcoholic. for sure. I like to believe what he claims, that a week before the race he wouldn't drink a drop, and and he would run every day. He smoked like a chimney, but he would still run every day, rain or shine. And he definitely one of the fittest, if not the fittest, on the grid. And that is known. All the other drivers regard that. However, I do get the odd snippet story that, so I met your dad just before qualifying with a beer in his hand. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a guy saying that at Nürburgring. So I don't know, but I'm pretty confident. Maybe sometimes he'd slip up for a race, and have a drink or whatever. But I think he was really focused, and he was really hardworking, really determined. So he was, I think he would not party for a few days or a week before the race and train hard. There was one funny story, actually. I think it was the American Grand Prix in '76. So he did qualify and got pole position. Then they got the news of the court case about losing the points for the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch, which was, so he was 9 points less. Nicky was 3 points more. So it was the 18 points. So at that moment, Dad thought the championship's completely out the window. It's fucked, he thought. So Alistair Corwell thought, well, we're not going to be able to control him tonight, so we're not even going to try. So this was a Saturday night. He just qualified on pole, I think, and there was a live band in the hotel, and most of the drivers, enjoyed the band, went to bed at 11 or whatever. Dad didn't. He carried on, and rumor has it he didn't sleep at all, and arrived at the track in his still the same clothes, completely drunk, with the lead singer and one of the backup singers, and win the race.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine getting in a Formula One car with a hangover. That would be devastating.
It's not much fun, I can assure you. I've done it once. I drove his Wolf at Goodwood. This was like 3:00 in the morning at the ball on Saturday night. I had nothing planned the next day, but then the owner of the Wolf comes up to me and says, Freddie, I'm way too drunk. You're going to have to drive tomorrow. I said, you're too drunk. Look at me.
Wow.
I just met a girl as well, so I didn't really get much sleep that night either. And then the session was at like 9 or 9:30 in the morning. I'm driving this like £1.5 million Formula One car up the hill, like hanging out of my ass. Oh.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't say no to, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary though.
So you are you doing more and more of that? Are you trying to seek out those opportunities, to kind of get in front of the public eye to help out your racing career, going to Goodwood, going to the Festival of Speed?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I didn't go to the Festival of Speed this year, but any opportunity I can. It's just I've been so busy this year. I actually had a wedding that weekend as well. But any opportunity to drive Dad's cars, definitely I'll take it. I'd love to. Most other historics, depending on the circuit, depending on the power of the car and everything, I might not. I might say no just for my health, because they are bloody dangerous.
Right.
If it's a runoff and good safety features on the circuit, and depending on the car, I might take it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of people they race historic or vintage Formula One cars at a lot of the F1 weekends, and I think the average fan doesn't realize just how dangerous those cars still are. It's not like the track's got hardly any safer, and those cars are absolute death traps. Is that the kind of agreed upon reason why your dad stepped away after only kind of a 6-year career in Formula One?
Yes, in short, yes, it was his health. I think in his words, I'm not prepared to risk my neck for 6th place. The car wasn't good enough. Had he still been in a front running car, I think he would have stayed longer. But his health was always a concern, and he openly admitted that. He wanted a short innings, get in, get your job done, and get out while you're still vertical. And also losing Ronnie in '78, Ronnie Peterson, I think that was a big blow for him, and he really drove just how dangerous. Well, he knew how dangerous it was, but because Ronnie didn't die directly from the crash, it was broken legs, but I think it was bone marrow got into his bloodstream or something like that, and he died. So yeah, I think that hit Dad really hard. He was a good friend of Ronnie's, and yeah.
Now, at that time, it's not like today's Lewis Hamilton's or Verstappen's as far as earnings go. What kind of money was he making during those mid and late 70s seasons?
I honestly don't know. I do know that McLaren says he was the cheapest world champion they ever had, because 75 going into 76 he was still a nobody, so they didn't have to pay him or pay him very much. And I also know that when he left Wolff, they offered him $4 million to stay on, and had he taken that, he would have been the highest paid sportsman at the time globally, so I'm told. But he turned it down.
Wow. And he turned it down just because that car was so far off the pace. That was Walter Wolff's first season in Formula One?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, exactly that, I think. And I think he just had enough. It was too dangerous for him. Had it been a front-running car, I'm sure the opportunity to win another championship and $4 million, I don't think he would have been able to turn that down. But right. Yeah, it's just an competitive car, and to be honest, I think he was scared.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And what did his, and maybe you don't know, but what did his financial situation look like kind of before he died, like having not made up a huge nest egg in Formula One? What did he do after that? I know he was commentating a bit. He
was completely in debt when he died, and it was the only reason I managed to go to have private education was his life insurance.
Really?
He wasn't a businessman. He lost business. He lost money in quite a lot of business ventures. Oscar's nightclub in Marbella, I don't think that was a success. He had shares. He did put some money into which now is a successful racetrack, the Daytona karting track, but it wasn't a success then. Apparently he invested in a farm as well at some point. But I think pretty much all of his business ventures failed. And he lost all of his money.
Wow.
He had a really nice Mercedes 6.9 litre Merc given to him by Merc. I never remember it driving. It was always up on bricks because he couldn't afford to run it, and so he took the wheels off so no one could nick it.
Wow. So what was your financial situation like growing up? What did your mom do for a living?
She was a full-time. She did have some jobs here and there, but I think it was quite a hell of a job looking after me and my brother. We weren't the easiest of kids, me in particular. Like I said, my father had a good life insurance policy, which paid, bought my mum a house and paid for my brothers and I our education, but there wasn't much left in the pot after that. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I race in the Canadian NASCAR series, so very much like the Euro Series cars.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's actually I'll see you at Three Rivers.
Oh, you'll be there. Nice one.
Yeah. So we'll have to meet up for a beer or something after or dinner.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Are you racing that weekend as well?
Yeah.
Sweet. Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, looking forward to it. You're gonna have a whole ton of fun in that the Nissan Cup there.
Yeah. What's it like? Is it pretty competitive? I mean.
I haven't, frankly, I haven't seen those cars run, but the previous series was the Micra Cup, and it looked like a string of like 4-stroke go-karts running, like just nose to tail.
Shit. Man, it's a front-wheel drive. I'm getting my excuses out now. I'm not getting front-wheel drive cars.
Yeah, just keep the wheels pointed straight. That's the fast way around.
Yeah. On the streets, I get front-wheel drive. I hope they've got insurance, man.
How did that drive for Three Rivers come about?
A guy got in touch. They're making a documentary about Gilles Villeneuve, and they wanted to interview me in absence of Dad, because Dad played an instrumental role in getting Gilles going to Formula One. So that's why they got in touch with me and said, "Can you come out?" And I said, "Yeah, but what's in it for me? It's a long way to go." And they said, "Well, we can probably get you this race." So I said, "Yeah, okay, cool, let's do it."
Yeah, perfect. Well, that works. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, I guess they just announced yesterday Jacques Villeneuve's going to race with us in the Pinty series.
Is he? Cool.
Yeah.
Has he done much racing in his Formula One since his Formula One retirement, or?
Yeah. I don't know the full extent of it, but I think he did at least a full season in the Canadian NASCAR series a few years back, and I've raced against him a handful of times in that series. And then he just did the Daytona 500 this year.
Okay, cool. Okay, so he's not
Yep.
shouldn't be too rusty then.
No, he'll still be quick. Yeah, no, for sure. So jumping back to the reignition of your racing career, I assume it was no longer that you were pursuing a Formula One career. You were looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I realized. I mean, it was probably too ambitious in the first place without a ton of money behind me. I realized that it's just wasn't realistic. I'm now too old and may or may not have the talent. I don't know, but I certainly can't deliver it at the moment. 2014 was a mess, and then that MRF championship, and then since then up until now it's just been one-off drives. I did the Euro NASCAR, the first half of the season, then the team ran out of money, and turns out they weren't even rebuilding the engines and stuff like that, so we never had new tires, and it was just all a bit of a shit show, which is a shame. And then just one-off drives since then. Invitations, managed to get a small sponsor, did the Road to Le Mans in 2019, which was funded by Texaco, which was a success on my part. Unfortunately, my teammate was uncompetitive, but that was pretty decent. I did a V to V Estoril. That was my first LMP3 race. That was end of 2018, and that was good. We came second in class, sixth overall, so we're pleased with that. That was a 6-hour race. And then last year, nothing over COVID, nothing at all. Last year I did one race at Monza in the Le Mans Cup, which was, my pace was good. Qualified fourth. I was only 2/10 off pole. But then unfortunately I made a mistake in the race and had some contact and got a drive through. But that was encouraging. And then, I wanted to do LMS or Le Mans Cup this year, and I was speaking to teams, really frantically looking for sponsors, but all by myself. And I don't have a marketing degree or anything. So I don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm learning. And all the teams, some of them were quoting me really nice prices, real pretty much cost prices, because they wanted me. And I'm bronze now, so I'm pretty competitive for bronze. But they still got a business to run. They can't afford to just fund me. But then my old manager from 2009 gave me a number and said, call this guy. And it's Hans Reiter from Reiter Engineering, but I hadn't heard of them because they've never been in the prototypes before. So I got in touch with him, and the price he quoted was even cheaper than everyone else. It really was baseline cost. And then got to the first round, and unfortunately my sponsor still hadn't come through. But he had already entered us into the championship. He says, no, we'll do it. And then before we did the Wednesday practice, and on the Thursday, he offered me a 5-year contract as a full-time driver for him. So that's yeah. But that. So yeah, I'm a full-time driver for Reiter Engineering now, and so this year's just gone from better to even better. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm still struggling to believe it now. I mean, my life right now is fantastic. I've got got my dream house. Still haven't quite finished renovating it. It's almost there, but up in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, so I can keep quiet, keep to myself. I've got a beautiful girlfriend who's in my kitchen at the moment, which is lovely, and my racing career is going well. So I'm a very happy man at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. You can't ask for much more than that. 5-year contract, man, that's unheard of. And is that the team funding that now? Is it a wealthy gentleman who owns that?
I think they've got some of their own sponsors or their own private investors, maybe a bit out of the team's pocket. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but I imagine it's not an endless pocket. So we're going to have to find some sponsors. So we are looking for sponsors. Yeah.
Right. And forgive me if you already answered the question. What series are you guys planning on running that? That's a full European championship, or it's the Le Mans championship?
It's the Michelin Le Mans Cup, which runs as a support to the ELMS, the European Le Mans.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's 1 hour, 50-minute races, 2 drivers, but it's actually become a lot more competitive this year because the rules in ELMS changed last year. So you could have a gold, a silver, and a bronze last year, but now if you have a gold, you have to have 2 bronzes. So most teams are going for a bronze and 2 silvers. Therefore, a lot of the gold drivers have left that championship and come into our championship. So there's some real top drivers in it, and it's really hot. And my teammates, so I'm obviously in the bronze. So you have to have 1 bronze is the rule in ours. So most pairings are 1 bronze and 1 silver, or 1 bronze and 1 gold. And my teammate's silver, and he's a good, talented driver, but he's never driven these cars before, and he's up against, some of these drivers have been driving these cars for years. I mean, we've got Tom Dillman, who's driven LMP1 for 3 years, and
Yeah, that's tough to compete against.
And at Le Mans, Mads, my teammate, held off Tom Dillman and beat him. We got second place, and Dillman was third. So, yeah.
Good. Oh, that's great. You're getting to drive some world-class tracks in that series. What are all the tracks that you guys race on?
We started at Paul Ricard, then we did Imola, then Le Mans, then we did Monza, and we're going to Spa and Portimao next. And yeah, and the Nürburgring was a different championship. That was in the Pro Stock Cup. So yes, wow. It's a track. Unfortunately, we're not doing Silverstone, but hopefully one day in the future.
Right. That would be a little closer to home.
Yeah.
So what's the goal for you now? Is the goal to go race at Le Mans in a prototype?
That's the goal. So for the next 5 years, 2026 will be the 50th anniversary of Dad's championship. The goal is to win Le Mans on that year or by that year. So Next year, either another season in this, or we move to ELMS. I think if we really had the budget, we'd probably go straight up to LMP2 next year, and then on to the World Endurance Championship in 2024.
Right. Wow. What are you doing for training in the meantime? I assume there's not a whole ton of races in that series. Are you running go-karts? Are you on the simulator?
No. Simulator, yes. Well, I haven't got one at home yet, and I live in the middle of nowhere. But certainly if it's a track I don't know, then I will go to the sim a few days before flying out. But my training is just fitness training, really. I do a lot of cardio and upper body strength training. But unfortunately, I'm getting my fitness back now, but just after Paul Ricard, I had a karting accident. Well, not an accident. I didn't wear a rib protector. I went to do 2 days of karting for fitness training, and on the first 10 laps, I broke a rib. It was two-stroke shifter karts. So I haven't been able to do any upper body weight training. And also, just before that, I did a half marathon, and the last couple of miles, my knee was a bit sore, but I knew I was well ahead of my record. I did it in 72 minutes. So I pushed on and I buggered my knee. So my cardio suffered, and so yeah, Monza was tough. The last 20 minutes in the car, I was struggling a bit, but the rib's fine now, so I'm back in the gym training.
Right, that's good. So what are you doing day to day? And you said you're way up in Scotland. Do you golf or hunt or fish or anything like that?
Renovating and farming.
Farming.
Not commercially farming. It's just for my own consumption. I'm thoroughly against large scale commercial farming. So I refuse to buy any commercially farmed meat, but I also refuse to be a vegetarian. I love my meat so much. I mean, actually right now this evening I'm butchering. Well, I've got to kill a pig after this call because he's got an appointment with the butcher tomorrow.
Wow. Okay. So what kind of livestock do you have at your farm?
Just pigs and chickens, guinea fowl, turkeys, and 1 sheep. I was given an orphan lamb last year, so she'll be put with a ram this year, hopefully. Because I thought, great, free meat, but then I was bottle feeding her, and within 24 hours, I thought, shit, I can't eat this thing now, can I? But hopefully she'll give me 1 or 2 lambs next year, which I won't get attached to, and I'll eat those guys.
Right. Wow, that's impressive. So are you totally self-sufficient as far as food goes?
Not yet, no. But I've got a polytunnel with veg, and I've got potatoes growing, and I've got some vegetables growing. I eat a lot of cheese, so I need to. It's really expensive cheese. I need to strike a deal with a cheese maker so I can trade some meat for cheese.
Yeah.
But I'm almost off grid. I mean, my water comes from the hill. That's completely untouched, natural water straight off the hill. Gas, I've got an LPG tank. I do have log burners yet to go in, but that'll heat my water as well once that goes in. And once I get solar power, I need to repair the barn first because half the roof came off in a storm earlier on this year. And then I'll get solar on the roof of the barn, and then I should be completely off grid.
Oh, that's great. So is the goal to be, I guess, live a very, you know, I guess, inexpensive lifestyle and just be a race car driver?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I've always wanted to be self-sufficient. I've always wanted a place somewhere remote like this, but not too remote. I mean, Patagonia, I'd love that, but it's it's a 25-hour journey to get there.
Yeah.
But this is the next best thing. But I didn't actually envisage having it this early on in my life. I was up here during COVID in 2020, and I saw this place from the hill. I was up walking on the hill, and I thought, oh God, the lucky bugger that lives there. I'll give my left nut to live there. And then I didn't realize it was derelict, and it was going to be on the market soon. And I would have gone and had a look around at it. I'm looking at the place right now where I saw the house from 2 years ago. It's actually 2 years this month.
Wow.
Pretty much to this day. And then when I was up here working on a friend's estate, in COVID time, and then I just started looking online at properties. I thought, shit, how much you can get for your money up here. So I thought, why not? Racing career is buggered because no sponsors. I really didn't think I was going to be racing again. So I thought, well, what's the harm in coming up here a bit earlier and seeing what happens? So, I mean, I'm up in a glen, up in the valley on my own, but I'm only 10 minutes from the town, and providing the ferries are running, I'm an hour and a half from Glasgow Airport, so it's not too remote.
Right, that's not bad at all. Hour and a half from the airport, you can't complain as a race car driver.
Exactly, yeah. Well, there actually turns out there aren't that many flights going from Glasgow. This time I managed to fly from Glasgow, but a lot I've still got to drive to London and then fly from there.
Right. How long's the trip to London?
Can be done once I get off the ferry, can be done in 6.5, but that's pushing it a bit.
Right.
I mean, not the speed limit, that's just no stops and no traffic,
Sure. So I've asked a bunch of my racing buddies who I've had on the podcast, if you could race, take the prestige out of any series or the prize money, if you could go race any form of racing, any car, what would it be?
Formula Ford is up there, Club Formula Ford without the wings. I did a rallycross test once. I really want to do that again. I really like that. That was awesome.
Okay.
Like full contact sport, and it's just mad, and that was great fun. So, yeah, Club Formula Ford racing is great because there's no downforce, no aerodynamics, so it's nose to tail, and I can drive them really well now. I remember I entered the Walter Hayes Trophy in 2016, around that time, maybe 2015, and there's like 130 cars entered, and I was in a 1992 car where the engine was down on power, but I was in my element. I drove that really well. I ended up finishing 4th in class and 19th overall, with a really shit car. But I really want to do it with a competitive car now.
Yeah, those cars are definitely fun. I've got fond memories of kind of no downforce formula cars for sure. Since you're now, I mean, maybe not an F1 historian, but you've certainly immersed yourself in kind of that 70s era. Do you have a greatest driver of all time in your mind?
Gilles Villeneuve, I think. I mean, not greatest of all time, but probably the fastest and the most exciting, I think. I'm sure you're familiar with the battle with him and with René Arnoux at Dijon. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, that's epic.
I read his book as well, and just how it started for him there, and he's definitely probably my main hero, I think.
And what was the story of your dad kind of giving him a nod or discovering him to some degree?
So that was a race in the Formula Atlantic at Three Rivers. And Dad finished second or third. Gilles pissed off into the distance, And Dad thought, shit, this guy's quick. We got to. And so he rang Teddy Mayer, aka the the team manager of McLaren, and said, we need to get this guy. This guy needs to get into Formula One now. He's really, really good. And so McLaren invited him for a drive, and he was really, really quick. And then before they had a chance to get the contract, he was in his caravan or his mobile home with his wife and his kids, and the phone rang, and some strange man on the other end of the line. His wife answered the phone, passed it over, and who was it? It was Enzo Ferrari, and he grabbed it. Yeah. So he was that good. I think that was the first time the Ferrari had ever hired a rookie.
Right. And just kind of on the recommendation of your dad getting whooped by him.
Well, I think it was the performance he did at Silverstone in the McLaren, which did it. He didn't finish the race well because he came in for a mechanical problem, but it turns out it was just the dials. He thought the car was overheating or something like that, but it wasn't. So he went back out and he came out behind the leaders, and he had the pace. He stuck with the leaders for the rest of the race, the leading pack, on his first ever Grand Prix.
Oh, okay. No, I get it. Yeah. Huh. Do you? We're almost out of time here, but do you have any questions for me or any parting words for the audience, or any plugs that you need to make for projects coming up or races coming up for yourself?
Not really sure. Looking forward to meeting you at in Canada. That's in a couple of weeks. We'll be there. Yeah, just a couple of weeks. Just follow my Instagram, guys, and if there's any sponsors out there watching that want to get involved, this unfortunately the sport doesn't run on thin air. Not on friendship. No, exactly. I believe I can offer a pretty good return in comparison to a lot of drivers. So yeah. Need all the help I can get, really.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. We'll see you at Three Rivers, and maybe there'll be someone there watching who will put you in the car.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Gary.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure, and take care, man.
Cool. Cheers.
That was Freddie Hunt. If you guys enjoyed this episode, share it with some friends. I can't believe how big this podcast has gotten just off word of mouth and you guys sharing it. So I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe. See you guys next week. Peace.